Hey, what's up, everybody? You are watching on the Town with Tanya, and I'm your host. Today's guest is an author, inventor, songwriter, producer, explorer of metaphysical mysteries, and she is the host of an executive producer, excuse me, of the Alice is a Trip Reincarnation Stories podcast, and the author of The End and her up and coming book, We what?
We
I
meet
wrote
again.
something.
We
We
meet.
meet again.
Yeah.
Right. Trilogy, right? Isn't that
Yeah.
trilogy?
It's a trilogy. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So forgive me, but I wrote something wrong. There you
That's
go.
okay. That's
Honestly,
okay. We're just here chatting, right? That it's people might be listening in on us, but we're like real people talking.
That's it. Just a little mess up. Please welcome the lovely Brownell Landrum. Thank you for joining us. Hi.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here. This is fun.
Oh, I appreciate you so much. I'm sorry for that little, I'm infamous now for some intro jack up somehow. I don't know
It
how.
doesn't matter to me. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, but everybody knows. Let's see. So you have a new book coming out, or it came out already, and you have some that you've already written. What got you interested in exploring writing about metaphysical mysteries?
Well, my first book was nonfiction. So that my first getting into writing, and it's called 5 Reasons Why Bad Things Happen.
Yes,
So when people say everything happens for a reason, I say, yes, I literally wrote the book on it. And so I never thought I would get into fiction. And then a few years after that, I thought, well, I'll try fiction. And so I wrote a series of novels called The Duet Stories. And the first one, I thought, well, this is just a love story. And then I started writing the second book. I was like, this is a love story going back to their past lives. And so I had so much fun looking at the characters and imagining who they might have been before, going back in history, tying all the themes in today. And so, if you're writing a love story, right, it gets boring once they get together, right? But if you can write a reincarnation one, you can just reintroduce them in another day and time and all that. And it just kind of, just was so much fun to write. And I realized that there were people reacting to it in such a beautiful way. Their minds opened up. They started looking at things. And so it just kind of went from there.
How do you think your podcast and group, Life is a Trip Reincarnation Stories, might actually be able to change the world?
Yeah, I do think it can. I have seen people's minds open up. And the one thing about it's a Facebook group is the Life is a Trip group. You'll see us by a stained glass kind of look. It's very upbeat. And the podcast is kind of a spinoff on that. And one of the things about it is that it's for stories, whether they're fictional or factual. And so I know you're a screenwriter, so I'm nudging you to write a story, because some of the stories start out as great, short film scripts, and some of them are short stories. And it's just we kind of get into all these kind of metaphysical topics. And like, for example, reincarnation. Personally, it doesn't matter to me if people believe in it or not. But when you start looking at it as a possibility, it answers so many questions, and it makes people so much more comforted. And also it kind of like, if you realize that you've been other races and you've been different genders and you've been different nationalities and different socioeconomic levels, all of a sudden, the whole idea of judging somebody else for something that you might in this world judge, you think, no, wait a minute, I've probably been that too. And so I just really like the way that opens up people's minds and dialogue and gives them meaning, so it's fun.
It sounds like fun. What first led you to that reincarnation process? Like, did you have an afterlife experience or something?
Yeah, I had my first kind of experience with reincarnation was I kept having what I call now a dreamery, which is a dream that's a memory. And I just kept having this recurring dream. And in that particular lifetime, I died of starvation in prison. And then I had somebody take me through a past life regression, and I felt my body transforming into this person that I had been before. And I'd been a teenage boy, like 14-year-old boy, and I was captured. And so that was the first time I looked into it. And then like a year or so after having those memories, I meet a man in this lifetime who had been my brother in that other lifetime. And all of a sudden, it just kind of made me start looking at like, what are all these stories about? And the afterlife stories. I don't know if you know anything about the work of Michael Newton, Dr. Michael. He has done tens of thousands of people regression to what's like on the other side, what I call the stairs, what happens when we're not here.
Right.
And I find that like even more important and more interesting.
Wow. And so on your, and I know it's a little off a bit, but on your website, there's people that could submit stories of their, whether they're fictional or really happened, near, what do you call them? Near-death experiences, I guess.
It could be near death, but I mean, we even have somebody writing a comedy about a ghost, right?
Oh, okay.
So it doesn't have to be super serious. It doesn't have to be, like I said, it can be fictional or factual.
Okay.
The website, I mean, the Facebook group is definitely, anybody can talk about any stories. Like, I remember being this, or I remember having a lifetime of this, or ask questions about, like, do you think it's possible that we could have been born in different countries or something like that?
Right.
But when we get to the podcast, it's about, as a storyteller, what's the difference between a story and a story, right? And so it's really about a story. Like, we want stories with a beginning, middle, and end. We want to entertain, and we want to be, cultivate storytellers. So it's a little different criteria for what we're looking for the podcast, but we're looking for stories.
How long do they have to be? Like a certain amount of pages, certain amount of words?
If they're a short film script, we're looking for under 20 pages. So, that's 20 minutes in the film world. And or a short story, generally between 1,000 and 3,000 words. But, we've had a few that are a little longer, and we've had a few that are a little shorter if they tell a really good story. So,
and what credit, do they get any credit for it or anything?
Yeah, we're on IMDb. So, and I've had some people say, I don't know what that is. I was like, yes, you do. Everybody knows IMDb. If they don't know, they know it.
That's where
it's the place where you go online to find out, like, where's your favorite actor, what movie they're in, or where's the movie filmed. It's the Internet Movie Database. And so we are on IMDb. So if somebody is a writer or they're an actor and they want to submit their voice, or read the script or read the short story, then they get IMDb credit, which is pretty cool for, what it's like in the industry. You want IMDb credits to keep you going.
Yeah. Very cool.
So it's really fun.
Cool. Okay. So you guys heard that one. So your new novel trilogy, We Meet Again. It's about a famous couple reincarnated today to fulfill a prophecy that will change the world. Where did you come up with that idea?
Yeah, it's kind of like, just to give people a kind of a concept or a wraparound, it's kind of like a Da Vinci Code meets Outlander with a reincarnation theme, right? It's got this kind of epic love story, and it goes back to 5 different lifetimes. And it's and then it's this mystery that's tied into it all, that goes, that pulls from way back in history. And I was I was kind of like, one day I was starting to think about, like, what does the word Renaissance mean? Right? It means rebirth. Okay. There's a little hint there in terms of what all that ties in together. So when I started thinking about that, and then I started thinking about history and what was the time of the Renaissance, how did the Renaissance get kind of, ushered in? And then I did so much research on the history of, the belief systems, and it goes all the way back to Pythagoras, who was like such the dude. Most people don't know that much about Pythagoras, but he was just so amazing. I mean, like Socrates, Aristotle, and Plato all worshipped, not literally, but I mean, essentially worshipped Pythagoras. They were all Pythagoreans. So that tells you how important his work was. And that's 2,500 years ago. So that's pretty cool.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, rumor has it that your couple in your We Meet Again series has a lifetime where they meet Giordano, I can't say his name, Giordano
Bruno. Yeah.
Bruno, Shakespeare, and John Dee in another, where students of Pythagoras. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, it was, well, the story goes into 5 past lifetimes. So it's a trilogy. And the first one is current day. So can you imagine, like, you wake up one day and all of a sudden you meet somebody and you're like, oh, wow, not only, did I know this person before, but and that's his first, have his first words to her are, we meet again. And they haven't ever met, but then have they, right? Because they had in other lifetimes. Right. And so one of the past lives one of the lifetimes is now, one is about almost 100 years ago. And then another one is in the Renaissance, in the 1500s in Europe, starts in Austria and then goes up to England. And it was just so much fun imagining my characters meeting these people.
Mhm.
And there's some question about Giordano Bruno, who most people don't know who he was, but to me, he's like one of the greatest heroes of history. If you go to Rome, there's a big statue of him in the place called Campo di Fiore. He was so ahead of his time. He got burned at the stake by the Catholic Church.
Yes.
For heresy. And the reason is because he said the earth went around the sun. And at that time, no, everything revolved around the earth, right? And he said the universe is infinite. And he also believed in reincarnation. And so he was really a daring person. And he was exiled from Italy. And he spent many years in France and in England. He hung out with John Dee. Do you know who John Dee was, by the way?
No.
He was Queen Elizabeth's astrologer.
Okay, I've heard of him, but okay. So
yeah, he was also the original 007.
Really?
Yeah.
Not Sean Connery?
Not that kind of original, not the actor original.
I was like, darn, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was her spy. Wow. And he signed his letters 007. So that's where all of that. Isn't that fun?
That is very much fun. Wow, that's a whole story in itself.
It really is. And so, and he was also into necromancy, which is talking to the people who on the other side who passed on. So he was such a really interesting dude. And then, so Giordano Bruno did spend 2 years in England. I know you're in England, so you know what that's like. He was, and he gave a lecture at Oxford and was laughed out of the place because he said the earth went around the sun and they were like, you're crazy, you know, like he was so laughing. And there's some quotes in Shakespeare that are direct lifts from Giordano Bruno's work. So like, where did Shakespeare get that if they didn't have some kind of encounter? So there's a lot of rumors that nobody can prove it. They can't disprove it. But I'm kind of writing a scenario where maybe all these people met, even Sir Francis Drake and all of these kind of people from English and British history. And then how they all tie into my greater mystery that goes back so many lifetimes and so many, decades and all that stuff. I mean, centuries and all that. So it's really a fun story.
It sounds like a fun story. In my past life, don't laugh at me, but I was a queen and I was very mean.
Which queen?
One of them, Queen of England. And I was not very nice. So I think karma came back some point. I don't know.
That's a hard life.
I don't remember all of it, but I remember wearing the jewels. I remember wearing everything when it was, I don't know what these were, inaugurations or what they were, but a lot of things happened that I do remember. But I'm convinced now I was a queen in the past life. So.
I believe you. And, I wrote in my duet novels, I wrote about a character who was the sultan, in the Ottoman Empire in the 1600s. And then I have him, and we think, oh, that's such an easy life. It was not an easy life to be a sultan. You had so many responsibilities. You had women you had to please. I mean, you think, oh, well, you've got these women fawning over you, but like they all expected to be serviced, if you know what I mean. Like it wasn't that easy. And so I have him in this lifetime being completely homeless, no responsibilities, living a nomadic life. Like I'm not having any responsibilities since I was so tired to come before.
That's hilarious.
It was really fun to write that. Yeah.
That sounds like a lot of fun. That's what I love about writing. You can literally go that left.
And I'm telling you, once you get into writing reincarnation, you just like start thinking, who might these people have been before? Or like, I would love to see somebody write like Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy today. I know they've written like adaptations like Bridget Jones and things like that, but like, or who might they have been before? Like, I'd love to look at the Bridges of Madison County and think, okay, who are they now? Right? Have they been reborn? Or even somebody like Prince, who was a big believer in reincarnation. Like, imagine him planning his next life. How fun that would be to look at.
No, that would be fun. That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, you're fun story.
There's quite a few people I can see that. Let's see. So you've said that your story, The End, a love story to the universe, is your most personal writing to date. What inspired you to write it? Like, tell us the genesis of the story.
Yeah, it's really been a profound experience. This last year has been a really interesting one in my life. In June of 2023, I'm living in Colorado, and my landlord wants to raise the rent 50%. 50%. And I mean, it was a great place. I'm not going to lie. I mean, like I'd look out the front, door on the building, and I'd see Lady Gaga walking her dog down the street. I mean, it was a pretty cool place to live, but that was just too much. And so I thought, well, I'm writing about Italy. Hint, hint. That's Italy features prominently in my We Meet Again. And I thought, I'm going to go to Italy. And all of a sudden, all of these things happened that felt like they were out of my control. And then all of a sudden, and I wanted to go to Italy for a year, but I couldn't even get an application for a visa. I mean, they weren't even taking applications. So I thought, I'm going to go to Italy for 3 months and then go somewhere else for 3 months, because that's what you can. Well, you know how the law works on the visas, probably.
Right.
And so you can go somewhere for 3 months, but you can't go back for 3 months and then, and then another 3 months. So I thought, well, I'm going to go to Tunisia. I had a fan of my novels that lived there, and it's 92 miles from Sicily, so it's super close.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I looked at it, found this incredible place that I fell in love with. And I meet somebody the day after I get there, and like something's happening. You know how relationships are like the big wake up call, usually for some sort of past life or, metaphysical mystery, if you will. And so a few weeks after that, I have a book marketing kind of advisor, and she's like, you have to write a story. And I thought, okay, I'll write a story about this experience. And as I'm writing it from the point of view of what I call the upstairs, like that there are entities, spirits, souls, guides, angels, whatever you want to call them, that are helping us. And I wrote it from the point of view of them. And I'm thinking this is kind of magical realism, fun kind of perspective. And as I'm writing, I'm like, wait a minute, this is real, and they're telling me what they're doing.
Right.
And some of the characters, or two of the characters, are what I call traffic angels. And so it's like, how do you get an American woman in Colorado to meet a British man in Tunisia? Like the logistics they had to go through. And so it's all about this kind of like feeling, learning how to surrender my life to a higher knowledge and to them, and listening to what they want me to do. Because at some point, like before then, I kept feeling like, and I don't know if you know what this is like, but you set a goal and you think, I'm going to make this happen. And then somehow you just keep running into obstacle after obstacle.
Yes.
And all of a sudden with this, I was like, and I felt like they were like border collies, like knocking me down the path they want me to go. Right. I might want to go here, and they want me, no, we want you over here. And I just learned to kind of surrender, and because I know they orchestrated this meeting with this man, and I know that it was purposeful and meaningful and really, really special. I also, went to find out there were lots of obstacles on that path as well, because we're human, right? And we make mistakes, and we learn from them, hopefully, and we decide what we're going to do. But as I was doing this, I'm writing this, and I'm realizing they are there, they're real. And when I was doing what they want me to do, they would reward me. So it just became super, super personal. And it still is, like, they're still really active in my life.
Wow.
And so, of course, it's called The End for a reason. And then, but I also say, can it ever really be the end if it's a reincarnation story?
That's what you say, is that please don't tell me there's a now end.
Yeah, exactly. And they're telling me there's more to the story. And so, as a writer, you know what that's like when you get that knock, and it's, you never know where that's coming from, but it's not coming from you sometimes.
Nope, absolutely not. And you have to follow it.
Yeah.
What are you working on next? Tell us about Inspirators. And
I've got some other things that I'm working on. And like you, I also write movie scripts. And so I've written a few movie scripts. Okay. One of them is a middle grade, kind of young adult middle grade movie script. And it's kind of a pre-utopian world. We have all this dystopian stuff, and this is kind of a pre-utopian world, and a sneak peek into that. And I wrote the movie script, and now I'm also writing the book version. And on that one, I'm writing it first person plural, which like only a dozen books in history, I think, have ever been written in first person plural.
First person plural. Wow.
Yeah. Wow. So it's written from the point of view of the team. And it's a we did this kind of point of view. And then I also have a movie script that I wrote called Denouement, which is a musical.
Oh, right.
And I'm writing the book version of that. And that's a whole different kind of like creative exploit. So now that I'm getting all this stuff launched and I'm getting my trilogy, my We Meet Again, because it launches in a little over a week.
Okay.
And then now that that's kind of getting out there, and when that kind of settles down a little bit, in a few months, I'm going to go back to those 2 stories. So I'm excited to get back into them.
That sounds very, very exciting.
Yeah. Thank you.
What about The Art of Letting Go?
Well, that's what denouement is. That's the subtitle to denouement.
Okay, the subtitle. Okay, so that was
yes, and that one I'll just tell you. We know what the log line is, right? In the screenwriting world, it's for the listeners or watchers. In the movie world, we have something called a log line, which basically kind of gives you an idea what the story is about.
Right.
It's not a tagline.
Okay.
It's kind of a little different than that, but this is about a documentary filmmaker who is lured into going to a retreat event to interview people, and he just wants to, he's been grieving the loss of his wife. He just wants to get in, get out, and get home. And then he confronts and finds the one thing that he's been avoiding, and that is joy.
Oh, well,
it's really an interesting musical, and I've written all the lyrics to all the songs. So
wow,
I'm just kind of hoping that at some point that gets made, because that's a really special one to me.
That sounds very special, and different as well.
Yes.
So you wrote 2 children's books about reincarnation and the other side. Tell us more about it.
Yeah. One of them is called Sometimes I Wonder. And I'll just read kind of recite the first few lines. It says, sometimes I wonder if this isn't home. And I don't mean Paris or London or Rome. I'm talking about another other place before this time and outside this space. So that's the one that called Sometimes I Wonder. And that's really kind of about life and how we plan our lives and what our lives are going to be about. If you know the Dr. Seuss book, Oh, the Places You'll Go, it was kind of inspired by that, except with a metaphysical kind of angle. And then the one called, the other one's called This Isn't My First Time. And, the opening lines are, this isn't my first time, of that I am sure. I've taken this trip and been on this tour. The scenery is different, the people are too, but green is still green and blue is still blue. If you try really hard, you just might recall your life before you were born so small. So,
wow, brilliant.
Yeah. So it's fun.
You're a colorful writer. I love that.
I have fun writing those. Yeah.
So those are the children books that we can check out.
Yes.
Make sure you guys go to her website. That sounds fantastic. And what does it teach anything to the children about afterlife, or just puts them in that experience so they don't know what it is, but they're gonna know it?
It basically kind of says, if go back to the Sometimes I Wonder, it's, it's the place where we plan who will be with and when. We pick on our names like Sarah or Ben or Williams, Rodriguez, Ivana, or Chin. Whoever we choose will feel like our kin. We decide on our lessons, the paths we will take, awards we might go for, and mistakes we might make. For life isn't easy and not always fun, but easy is boring, like games always won. So it does hopefully set up the idea of like, yes, we're, before we get here, we do some planning and we do some thinking about who we're going to be born with. There was a great NPR, they had their, NPR had a podcast called Invisibilia, and they had one with a little boy on there. And he sat there and explained how he chose his parents. He's like, yeah, I went to like this mommy and daddy store and picked up my parents for this lifetime. Yeah. Wow. So cute. And there's literally thousands and thousands of those kinds of stories of children remembering, if you ask them. So if you can give them a book to have them think about that and maybe, open up that discussion, you never know what you can find out from them. So it's, they usually do remember.
And we know the kids say the darndest things.
We do know that too.
You might. I'm going to ask my grandson that question.
Yeah. Well,
I do ask kids that I meet, babies, especially little babies, newborn babies, because sometimes they'll stare at me, and they stare, and they're just like, like they know me. And I said, "Do you know me?" And they'll go, and I was like, "I knew you knew me."
I love that. I love.
How many lives ago? Was it 5 or 10? And then they do something, and the mother's like, it's like, I think you're talking. I said, no, we are. Mind
Yeah.
your business, mom. We're talking.
Totally. And I was a hospice volunteer on and off, well, for about almost 10 years. And
Mhm.
I had an Alzheimer's patient once, and she was just jabbering and gobbledygook, right? And her daughter was like, oh, she doesn't know what she's saying. I'm like, no, she's talking to your dad, and they're just using a different language. Like, I mean,
Wow.
because I knew she
I
was
believe that.
she was going back and forth. Like, this
I
was
believe
not.
it.
Yeah, I mean, it
Totally.
just
I've seen babies have a whole conversation and people's like, they're like, "Ah, yeah, 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 yeah." And it's like, and you keep talking to them and they're responding exact cue. It's like, and the mother's like, if I didn't know any better, I'd say you're having like a serious conversation. And she actually knows. I said, you know better. She does know. She's been here before. In fact, she just left the past life. So she's way smarter than I ever will be.
there you
And she was
go,
like,
right?
and I was like, think about it. She just left. The smaller someone is, that's why kids are so free. And so they see things and they're adventurous and they're wild. They ready to do whatever because they just left and they know the freedom. It's once we've been here a long time that we start getting rigid and saying, no, I believe that.
Totally. And it's like an adventure to them. And, of course, we don't know how many lifetimes they've had. They could be like really
exactly.
early and going, oh yeah, it's been a while since I've been here, or
Yeah.
like, I've never been to this part of the world before, or
Right.
I've never been I wrote a story about a man named Curl who always felt more like Curly, right? And they start finding out all his past lives he'd been female. So he never had a past life as a male. This is his first time being male. So like, start looking at that from a dimension, that opens up the possibilities. Yeah.
That's so interesting because I swear to you, I call them dreams. Yeah. Where I've been to places that I've never been to. And then I found those places really existed. And I was like, whoa, no, I was literally there. Like, there's a building in China that I was in this building. And I was just scrolling through something one day and said, oh, that is the building. Like, I mean, it was vivid, very vivid. And then I've been to places, I've flown across Nile River. I mean, places that I've never been to. And I said, that really exists. How? So I'm starting to believe, like, no, I don't know. Either I'm crazy or I've been here before.
Well, and I have to warn you, I think you're going to start writing some stories that are going to be on our podcast, and you're going to start having some people following these kinds of things. And again, one of the things that's important to me is that, in our Life is a Trip group on Facebook, as well as on the podcast, as I said before, they can be fictional or factual.
Okay.
So sometimes I tell people and they think, oh, well, I remember the Nile, or I remember this Chinese building. And, as a writer, if I just tell people, start writing, because whatever comes to you is coming to you for a reason. Nobody's going to judge whether that you can prove it or not. Nobody's going to try to, because whatever that is, it's a message in it. Right. And it's also just really fun to write about. I mean, it's just,
it's fun. I love writing. Writing's a great way to escape. And create worlds that I just did one the other day and I was like, what is wrong with me? I went to a whole nother, because I was just dreaming about AI and I wrote a whole AI short real quick. And I didn't even realize until I was like, this would be good, because the fear of AI and all that stuff made me think about this particular story.
Oh, yeah. Well, like, I have a friend of mine who's an accomplished writer and screenwriter, and he had mostly written sci-fi. He's written some time travel. And I said, you need to write something for the podcast. And he said, never in his life had he sat down and written something in one sitting and it flowed instantly. Like, nothing he's ever written had flowed that easily. And you and I know what that means.
Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, I definitely, now when you were asking for writers for the podcast, that's different. Tell us about that?
Yeah, well, what those are is, as I said, they're, if they're short film scripts, they're under 20 pages. The only challenge with short film scripts, because I love them, is we have to get an actor group together to read them, right? Because, so we're always looking for actors and actor groups that want to help read them and get IMDb credit.
I love those.
Yeah, and then, or they're short stories, generally between 1,000 and 3,000 words, because we want people to kind of hear these stories, and some of them are, 10 minutes, some of them 15, some, a little bit longer. Okay. But so, you're just listening to a story, and it's not an interview podcast, it's just stories. So you just tune into the Life is a Trip, Reincarnation and Afterlife Stories. I'm sure you'll put the link there or whatever, but or find me, Brownell Landrum. I'm the only Brownell Landrum in the world, or find me, I'll find
Yes.
this on Facebook. And you'll start finding out like what these stories are. And it's just stories, that's it.
Nice. Very nice. Um, what what advice would you give someone to be an inspired, that wants to be an inspiring writer, who wants to do similar stories? What advice would you give?
Kind of what I was kind of hinting at, which is just sit down and write, and you never know what's going to flow.
Mm.
In the writing world, right? There's two kinds of writers. There's what they call, plotters who plot everything out, and there's pantsers who the seat of your pants just sit and write and it flows. And I've written both ways. I couldn't have written We Meet Again that way with the pantser, because it's such a methodically planned out mystery that I'm laying clues, and the clues all have to fit together and everything.
Okay.
But just, sit down and write. I do have on my YouTube channel, Brownell Landrum YouTube channel, that there is and the Life is a Trip YouTube channel, there is a video I did about how to turn your story into a story. So if for anybody who's like got a memory, but they don't know how to turn it into a story, we've got kind of instruction on that. So,
oh, wow. So there's a whole YouTube on that. So you guys can check out her page. You can go to YouTube. She's on Instagram, TikTok, I believe, as well.
Yeah, I'm just starting out with TikTok, so I'm hoping to get learning about that. I set up a shop the other day, and that wasn't so easy as I thought it would be.
So, but all you aspiring writers who always like, I've never done this and I want to try, this would be a fun time for you to try. You have nothing to lose, absolutely nothing.
And you could build a platform, and we could hear from Hollywood, and Hollywood could say, I want to make this, short film or this short story, or I want to take this, and who knows what could happen.
You never know. Anything's possible. So do you really believe that everything happens for a reason?
I do. As you know, I wrote the book on it. And when I was writing that, I was going through a really difficult time in my life. And all of a sudden, I'm thinking this has to be a why. There has to be a reason this happened. And so I was kind of like in a meditative state. And I was like, yes, it's a reason. There's always a reason. And here are the 5 reasons. Right. And then I don't know if you've ever heard of the book When Bad Things Happen to Good People.
Yes.
I actually met Rabbi Kushner, who wrote that book.
Wow.
That was like a huge bestseller, and he was gracious enough to read my book. And it set up this kind of philosophical debate of whether he thinks the universe is random. He doesn't think anything happens for a reason. And I think everything happens for a reason. Right?
Absolutely, I do too.
And so it was really interesting. And it kind of prompted me to do more research. And there is some really solid research that says that people who believe things happen for a reason are happier than those who don't. It gives more meaning to life, right? It's not like, oh, I'm just going to, who knows, out of the blue, a meteor or, or asteroid, whatever it is. A meteorite could hit my window. Yeah, I guess, but maybe there's a reason, or maybe somehow I can make it mean something.
Right. But also, I mean, and I could be wrong, but we can almost kind of prove that everything happens for a reason in a weird way. Right? Because if everybody was to, okay, I'll give you an example. So Facebook and all those social media sites go by this I call Dale Carnegie effect, right? Where I say I know one person, but I really know 1,000 people. And you're like, how do you know 1,000 people from 1 or 3 people, whatever that is? And it's because one person knows one person who knows one person who knows one person. You're connected by a thread. If the afterlife, if like how we're all, let me see if I can get this, I can set it up correct. So how I can almost prove that that we are here before, or meant to be is the question, the phrase that we're saying, or what was it? How did I phrase it? That we, oh gosh, really? Everything happens for a reason. Is because, so keep in mind that theory of how Facebook works and how all that stuff works.
Yeah, I'm listening. I'm fascinated.
So with that being said, how many times have we, let me see. Okay. Someone has come up to me and when I was speaking, or you or anywhere, and said, I really would have, I don't know, not been happy with myself had I not heard you speak. Right. Or, and that's just a one little microcosm example, meaning that you went to that place to speak. Right. Yes. And you're thinking like 300 random people. Right. Yeah. But 3 people came up to you out of those 300 people that must have had to come up to you personally and say, I felt like I came here today because now I know why I was here, because you spoke. And it was what I needed to speak to my soul to survive today. Right. So
Right.
those they're little nuggets, but just follow me. That's one. That's just one. But there's other ones where you look at someone who was going to drown in the lake, let's say, right? But someone saved them. And then we didn't connect the dots, but we see 20 years later, they became a surgeon and they saved Jane from, I don't know, aneurysm. I'm making up anything, right?
Right. No, I'm with you. I love those stories, right?
We don't know those connections. Sometimes we're lucky we find them out, but sometimes we don't. And like I told a little boy once when he was young, that I told his mother, I just saw him. I have a third eye. And I told his mother, I said, he's going to be famous. And she was like, they were on an audition. Yes, it's true. They Nickelodeon, whatever. So that's true. But he ended up going on to having a #1 show. And she was like, well, how did you know? And I was like, something in his eyes. But that was just me. Now, how is that relevant or not relevant? Who knows? But I'm sure at some point, at that time when he was young, the mother was trying to say that he was too big, as you know the word I want to use. And I said, don't say that. Don't speak that to his life. Don't say that. And I'm sure one of them are thinking about that conversation at some point. And I'm sure it's helped him internally somehow, or, change her language somehow. Now, do I see it all the time? No, but I believe we all affect each other in one way or another. And that's why, I made Mr. Do it. I believe everything happens for a reason. It could be so simple. I've seen times where I've said, I'm not going to go to this event. And then someone crashes that was in the car. You know what I'm saying? Like things like that.
There's some research that says that airplanes that crash are very rarely full. There's like people not showing. Wow. I mean, there's some really, not every one of them, obviously.
No, I know what you mean.
But a lot of them, if you do the research, and I haven't done it in a while, but there was some really solid data that like a huge percent don't show up for the flight. They weren't, some of it wasn't even booked all the way. Yeah,
something stops them or they don't feel like it.
And even on 9/11, all the people that
happened to me
on time, I mean,
I missed September 11th.
So somewhere the upstairs, something's happening on that.
I had a job interview in the building that day around that time, and I never am late for a job thing like that ever. But that day, my spirit was like, just lay here. And I was like, all right, I'm just going to lay here. And I was like, I'm just going to lay here. So I ended up, technically, I would have been an hour late. But had I been on time, I went to go put my foot on the train, and I would have made that train. But the conductor said to me, that's weird. You heard that? I said, what? He said, the building, first building. I said, what? He said, yeah. So had I been on time, I would have probably been in that building and around that floor. So I thank God every day that I follow my gut, and we do all have a purpose. And like the conductor could have just been like, and let me on the train. But something told him he said something told me to wait. And so something told me to wait too. Now, had we not waited, don't know. I mean, I don't think it was my time, but it could have been my timer. I don't know. But we all do intertwine somehow. So I don't know. I can't make the full connection, but there's been people I say, I know I met them. I used to be a drug counselor. I know I met them for a reason. You know what I'm saying? And clients have said to me, I'm so glad I've met you. Students have said to me, wow, 20 years later, did you know, blah, blah, blah. I had a guy tell me the day I met him, he was going to off himself. And because I'm known for talking to people, as you see, I talk you to life.
Yeah, we're here.
And that's my new saying from him. And he told me when he met me, he had set it up because he lost custody of his kids, blah, 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 blah. And he was going to off himself, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, I had no idea. All I know is my spirit said something's wrong and talk to him. And I just talked to him in the bar. Hi, how are you doing? And I had my own problems, but I forgot about them because I was like, so what's going on? I said, you're never like this. What's wrong with you? Your face, look at that face. And he was like, trying to get a laugh out, but I could tell something said, keep talking to him. And I talked to him for like 3 hours. And when he got up, he said, I'm glad you came in. This is the first time we ever got to really talk. And I'm glad, he said, I heard you talk a lot, but you talk me to life. And that's where I say the now. I don't say I talk you to death. I say I talk you to life.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That sounds
And
like a
so,
good title or
I
something.
mean, yeah, it is. It is. I just never sit down and do it. But can you imagine had I never, and I saw him all the time for like 3 or 4 years, all the time. It's always hi, goodbye. That's it. Nothing, never sit down for conversation. But my spirit said, sit down and talk to him. Just 5 minutes. 5 minutes. And he told me one night when he saw me depressed, he told me the story. He said, you know what that night was that?
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
He said, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. And I was like, what do you mean? That's what I mean when I say somehow or another, we're all connected and nothing happens by accident. Good,
Exactly.
bad, or ugly, or indifferent. It's what we make from it after that I think is the interesting part.
That's a big part of it. And that's honestly, my book, of course, is The 5 Reasons Why Bad Things Happen. And the overarching thing that they all have in common is to get us to change, right?
Yes.
If we're
Yes.
going down a path that's not the right path, whatever that
Mm.
might be,
Mm.
we need something to happen.
Yes.
And like I was mentioning, the border collies, if they want to knock us, and sometimes they have to knock us really hard on our butt to get us to change. But once we get to the why,
Right.
like that's really a big theme in a lot of what I write. Once we get to the why, then miraculous things can happen.
Right. That is the why. Whew, that's just, look back and you're like, okay, that's why.
Yeah,
You know?
that's right. And then you go, wait a minute, maybe I just went through this because this is my career calling, or I need to write about this, or I need to, like I've had people that read my stories say, that they almost committed suicide, but they gave them something. It opened up an avenue to them that they never had thought of. And, so you just, the more you have to put yourself out there. And, I know a lot of the writers are probably going, I couldn't put myself out there and let people think I write about this. I'm like, write it as fiction, right? You don't have to believe in time travel to write a time travel show or a story,
Right.
But you never know when these little messages might be something that, like you said, change the world. It can.
Yes. No, exactly. That's I believe every story matters, and I believe every person who has a voice matters, which is why I do the show, because not everybody has a PR person or whatever. Great CBS can get to CBS or NBC, which are great by their standards, and not everybody needs to. Sometimes the little guy is the one you want to get the message to. I was just
exactly. It could be, that's why I don't know what's going to happen with my books or the end. I want anybody listening, you can read it for free. So
yes. Yes. How we do that? We go to your website.
It's on my website. So you can find it there. It's called The End, A Love Story to the Universe. So you can read that free. My We Made Again, you can read the first book in the series for 99 cents. So that's really easy. But the really truth is, I don't know how many people are going to follow any of this.
No.
I might find out that, like, for example, your story, you may put a story on our podcast and you may get the call from Hollywood or from the producers there in England and may become a huge success. And personally, I won't financially benefit, but you bet my soul is going to benefit from facilitating that and that next step into things. So that gives me, when I did the first contest for people submitting stories, I had so much more fun telling people they won than if I had won.
Oh, yes, it is a nice feeling. It's such a nice
really like, this is real, and, I'm not a young person. So, to have something
that you're only 25.
Yeah. And another lifetime, maybe, in a parallel world. No, but if I leave, because there's over 1.5 billion people in the world believe in reincarnation, and there aren't enough stories. And so, and I pitched a TV series to Hollywood a number of years ago, and I outlined over 300 stories. Like, this could go on forever. This is an endless, opportunity.
I know. And I'm just thinking, I'm like, wow, God, it really could go on forever. Because I just had a dream the other day and wrote it down. I was like, this could be like a quick short. Like, this is pretty good. I was really surprised. I was surprised at it, but I'm going to actually submit something because it just for fun, just for the challenge.
It's fun, like I said. And, some people can just all of a sudden the stories come to them because they're being guided. It's like, one of my favorite Bob Dylan quotes, he says, the song was there before I came around. I just wrote it down.
Wow.
So, and Liz Gilbert talks about like all these thoughts and ideas are like energy and they'll land on the person that's supposed to tell the story.
Mhm.
So they kind of have their own energy. And you and I know what that's like when you get tied in, you get pulled into an energy. It's like, that's where you're, that's when you feel like I'm destined to write the story.
Exactly.
So,
wow.
And I'm destined to hopefully get more of these stories out there. But like I said, whether they're mine or somebody else's, it's
well,
all good.
I believe it always comes back to who it was meant to be for. And that may not be everybody. And that's where, as a journalist, you get not confused. You can get a little sometimes, because the society will pressure you, or people will not look down on you, but they'll judge you, I'll say, because you're not doing 5 million views or whatever big thing they call that. I don't know. To me, I don't care if you get 1 million views, that's great. But if one person didn't walk away with their life saved or changed, to me, it doesn't really matter. I don't care. So I'm very funny about people pressuring me into like do sensationalism. Like they want me to do gossip and this stuff. I'm not doing that. I don't want to. I have no desire. If I had desire to, I would, but
Right.
I'll probably be the best at it. But I don't. Yes, it makes more ratings, but I don't care about ratings. I care about people healing their souls, finding their souls, finding themselves, making better decisions, being the best they could be, living life on my term. That's what I care about. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't want to.
In fact, one of the restrictions we do have on the podcast is we don't accept horror stories.
Oh, really?
Because I don't really. That's not how it works, and I don't really want to put out that energy. People can write it if they want, and I'm not begrudging anybody whatever their talent and whatever their interest is. But in our world, that's not our vibe, right?
Okay.
We want to. I mean,
what about soft horror? Like not horror.
Like somebody's writing a ghost story, right?
Ghost story.
And it's a comedy. So you can cross genres. I mean, certainly there are stories with serious. There's one of the stories that I wrote on there called Justine, and it gets into a very serious topic. I won't give it away because it's only 15 minutes or something to listen to. Yeah. But the actors, they're like, this is my life. This is real. This is like so important. Like they got so passionate, and like, this was just like, you have no idea how much this, like you're saying, when you say, well, this matters so much to me. So yes, some of it can be intense and some of it can be real whimsical and funny and silly, or, a little off, like what, because it doesn't have to fit the rules of reincarnation, whatever they are. Right. Or past lives or between lives or the afterlife, or, it's kind of, non-religious really. Right. I have plenty of atheists who can believe in reincarnation. You don't have to believe in any kind of religion to believe in it.
Exactly.
But I just didn't want dark stuff, too dark, like horror, because
we get enough of that while watching TV every day.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, people can write that. I'm not begrudging that. But in terms of what the vibe is for the podcast, I kind of put that limit on it.
Okay. Well, thank you. I've had a great time chatting with you. And everybody, please remember to go to her website and check out We Meet Again and The End. The End. Sorry, me and my no glasses self. Go to her website and check out the books. If you have any issue with the website, how to find it, just hit me up. I always have a link for you. And Brownell, it's been fabulous talking with you. And I will chat forever. But let us know if anything new comes out, and hang out with me for a minute while I say goodbye to everybody. Guys, thank you, Tony and Jen and Grandma. And we're missing Joe today. Where'd you go, Joe? Where did you go, Joe? But thank you guys for watching. And we appreciate you. And we'll see you. Now, ironically, we'll see you. We'll see you Saturday we'll see you Sunday, but we'll see you Saturday first. That's going to be a premiere of a Japanese film. It's in English. It's got subtitles, but it's in English. About a girl who finds her American dad, who was a military man stationed in Japan. So make sure you check out Saturday. It's special. I'll send it out again, but watch it. And that's what Saturday show is going to be about. So thank you so much for watching, guys. And here we go. And we will see you guys on Saturday. Okay, stay with me, Brownell.